I'm Scarlett, 29, and I thought moving to Chicago after my breakup would be my fresh start. When I found Madison and her beautiful brownstone apartment, it seemed perfect. We clicked instantly. Similar interests, both professionals, she even had mutual friends on social media. I never imagined that the charming photographer who became my roommate would turn my sanctuary into a nightmare when I discovered a hidden camera pointing directly at my bed. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to join our community. Have you ever discovered someone in your life wasn't who they seemed to be? Let me know below, and let's get into this story. Finding affordable housing in Chicago on a marketing specialist salary isn't easy, especially when you're starting over. 6 months ago, I ended my 5-year relationship with Kyle after discovering he had been cheating with a coworker. The betrayal stung, but what hurt more was realizing I needed to rebuild my entire life from scratch at 29. We had shared an apartment in Minneapolis, built a friend group together, and even adopted a cat that he insisted on keeping. With nothing holding me there anymore, I accepted a job offer from a boutique marketing agency in Chicago. The salary bump was nice, but the cost of living increase meant I couldn't afford to live alone in any neighborhood I'd actually want to call home. After 2 weeks of disappointing apartment viewings, basement units with suspicious mold, 6th floor walk-ups with shared bathrooms, or gorgeous places way beyond my budget, I was getting desperate. My Airbnb was costing a fortune, and my new job was starting in 10 days. That's when I found Madison's listing, Professional Female Seeking, came to share gorgeous 2-bed, 2-bath brownstone in Lincoln Park. Private bedroom, shared kitchen, and living space, $1,200 a month, including utilities.
Convincingly and honestly sounds.
The price was at the top of my budget, but the location was perfect. A short commute to my new office and in a safe, vibrant neighborhood. The photos showed hardwood floors, tall windows, and built-in bookshelves that made my book-loving heart skip a beat. I messaged her immediately, and she responded within an hour, suggesting we meet the next day. When I arrived at the address, I was immediately impressed. The brownstone was on a tree-lined street with blooming flowers and window boxes. Madison opened the door with a warm smile that reached her blue eyes. At 32, she had the polished look of someone who had their life together. Blonde hair in a stylish bob, minimalist, but clearly expensive clothing and an easy confidence I envied. "You must be Scarlett. Come in, let me show you around," she said, gesturing me inside. The apartment was even better than the pictures. Sunlight streamed through the windows, highlighting the tasteful decor that managed to be both trendy and comfortable. Madison gave me the tour, explaining that she was a professional photographer who primarily worked from home, but had a small studio space nearby for client shoots. "The bedroom would be all yours," she said, showing me a spacious room with a queen-sized bed frame. "I know you're bringing your own furniture, but you're welcome to use the bed frame if it works for you." "This is gorgeous," I said honestly. "How long have you lived here?" "About 3 years," Madison replied. "My previous roommate moved in with her boyfriend, so I'm looking for someone new. I work a lot, but I'm friendly and tidy. I think the most important thing with roommates is respect for each other's space and good communication." I nodded enthusiastically, already picturing my books on the shelves and my laptop at the cute desk by the window. "I completely agree." "Okay." We sat in her living room sipping the coffee she'd offered and chatted about our lives. Madison was easy to talk to, asking thoughtful questions about my career and moving from Minneapolis. She seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me, not just as a potential rent payer, but as someone she'd be sharing a home with. "I looked you up on social media before you came," she admitted with a small laugh. "Hope that's not too creepy, but I noticed we have some mutual connections. Do you know Taylor Williams?" I was surprised. "Yes, we worked together in Minneapolis. How do you know her?" "College friends. Small world, right? I actually texted her when I saw the connection, and she had nothing but good things to say about you." That revelation eased any lingering concerns I might have had. If Madison knew Taylor, she was legitimate. By the end of our hour-long conversation, I was ready to sign the lease on the spot. "I'd love to live here," I told her. "When could I move in?" Madison's smile widened. "I've got one more person to meet tomorrow, but honestly, I have a really good feeling about you. Let me do that final interview to be fair, and I'll let you know by tomorrow night." I agreed, though I spent the next 24 hours anxiously checking my phone. The text came that evening. "The apartment is yours if you want it. When can you move in?" A week later, I was officially Madison's new roommate. She helped me carry boxes up the stairs, ordered pizza for dinner, and even had a welcome home bottle of wine waiting. As we clinked glasses that first night, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief and optimism. After months of emotional turmoil and uncertainty, I finally felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The first few weeks were everything I'd hoped for. Madison respected my privacy, but was always up for a glass of wine and conversation after work. She knew all the best restaurants in the neighborhood and introduced me to her favorite coffee shop, where the baristas soon knew my order by heart. On weekends, she showed me around Chicago's neighborhoods, taking photos with her professional camera that she later edited and sent to me as a welcome to your new city gift. I quickly settled into a routine, early mornings at the local gym, days at my new marketing job, and evenings either exploring the city or relaxing at home. Madison's work schedule as a freelance photographer was more flexible, so she was often home when I returned from the office. She always seemed genuinely interested in hearing about my day. How was the client meeting, she'd ask, or did that creative director like your campaign idea? She remembered details about my work that even Kyle had never bothered to keep track of. It wasn't until about a month in that the first small red flags appeared. Madison began asking increasingly personal questions about my dating life. At first, it seemed like normal roommate curiosity. "Are you ready to get back out there after Kyle?" she asked one evening as we shared takeout. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Part of me wants to focus on settling into the new job and city first." "That makes sense," she nodded. "But when you do start dating again, what's your type? Maybe I know someone I could introduce you to." The questions became more specific and frequent. Had I tried any dating apps yet? What was my ex like in bed? Did I have trust issues now? Each time I answered vaguely, increasingly uncomfortable with the direction of our conversations, but not wanting to seem unfriendly. I also noticed that no matter how late I came home, whether from work events or the rare occasions I went out with new colleagues, Madison was always awake, sitting in the living room as if waiting for me. "You didn't have to wait up," I'd say. "Oh, I was just working on these client photos," she'd reply though. I sometimes noticed her laptop screen showed social media rather than photo editing software. Then there were the instances when I'd return home to find things slightly different in my room. My closet reorganized to maximize space. My toiletries rearranged in the bathroom so they'd be easier to reach. My books alphabetized because it looked neater. Each time Madison presented these changes as helpful favors, making it difficult to express my discomfort without seeming ungrateful. "I noticed you were running low on shampoo, so I ordered you more," she said one day, handing me my preferred brand. "Thanks, but how did you know which one I use?" I asked. "Oh, I just glanced at the bottle in your shower caddy," she said casually. But our bathroom had separate cabinets, and I kept my shower items in a closed toiletry bag. Despite these moments of unease, I told myself I was being paranoid. Madison was just being friendly and helpful, if perhaps a bit lacking in boundaries. The apartment was beautiful, the location perfect, and most of our interactions were pleasant. I chalked up my discomfort to still adjusting to having a roommate again after living with a partner. I didn't realize then that these small boundary violations were just the beginning, the first threads unraveling in what would become a tapestry of deception and violation that would change my life forever. About 2 months after moving in, I decided it was time to dip my toe back into the dating pool. Chicago was full of interesting people, and a colleague had introduced me to a dating app specifically for professionals. When Madison saw me swiping one evening, she immediately sat down beside me, peering at my phone. "Ooh, are you dating again? Let me see the prospects," she said, reaching for my phone. I instinctively pulled it away. "Just browsing for now." Her smile faltered slightly. "Come on, I have great taste in men. I could help you avoid the creeps." Reluctantly, I showed her a few profiles, and she had strong opinions about each one. "Him, no way, his eyes are too close together. That's always a red flag. This one, the watch he's wearing is fake, I can tell. Oh, this guy might be okay, but he's probably lying about his height." When I matched with a financial analyst named Drew and agreed to meet him for drinks, Madison's interest intensified. She insisted on helping me choose my outfit, rejecting my first 3 selections before approving a dress I rarely wore because I thought it was too revealing. "Trust me, this one is perfect. It shows off your figure," she insisted. "Take a picture when you get to the bar so I can see how it looks in different lighting." That struck me as odd, but I brushed it off as photographer curiosity. The date with Drew went surprisingly well, and when he walked me home, I felt a flutter of excitement I hadn't experienced since before the breakup with Kyle. As soon as I unlocked the apartment door, Madison appeared as if she'd been waiting right behind it. It was nearly midnight. "How was it? Tell me everything," she demanded, pulling me to the couch despite my protest that I was tired. "It was nice. He's interesting. We might see each other again," I said, trying to keep details minimal. "Did he try to kiss you? Did you let him She pressed. "Madison, I'm really tired. Can we talk tomorrow?" She looked disappointed but nodded. "Sure. You know I just want to make sure he's good enough for you, right?" As I got ready for bed, I realized Madison had been in my room again. The dress I'd carefully hung in my closet that morning was now laid out on my bed along with the earrings I'd chosen to wear. I distinctly remembered putting those earrings in my jewelry box before leaving. The next morning, Madison acted as if nothing unusual had happened, but I noticed her watching me closely as I texted Drew to thank him for the date. When I agreed to a second date, her smile seemed forced. "Just be careful," she warned. "Men can hide their true selves for a long time." Over the next few weeks, I went on several more dates with Drew. Each time, Madison's behavior grew more concerning. She would text me repeatedly during the dates, claiming various minor emergencies that needed my immediate attention. Once she even showed up at the restaurant where Drew and I were having dinner, pretending it was a coincidence. "Scarlett, what a surprise," she exclaimed, though the restaurant was in a completely different neighborhood from ours. I introduced her to Drew, watching as she assessed him with a critical eye. "I've heard so much about you," she said, though I had deliberately shared minimal details. After that, she began making subtle comments to undermine my confidence in the relationship. "I noticed Drew checked out that waitress when you weren't looking," or "he seems kind of controlling with how he ordered for you," though he had only suggested dishes after asking what I liked. Her behavior wasn't limited to my dating life. When I made friends at work and invited them over for wine one evening, Madison dominated the conversation, sharing embarrassing stories about me that I'd never told her, and making inside jokes as if we'd been friends for years rather than months. My colleagues seemed uncomfortable, and one texted me later, "Your roommate is a bit intense. Everything okay?" Increasingly, Madison found reasons why we should spend all our free time together. She'd plan weekend activities and react with hurt if I had other commitments. "I thought we were going to have a roomy day," she'd say with a wounded expression. When I mentioned visiting a museum with a work friend she insisted on joining, then monopolized the conversation so thoroughly that my colleague made an excuse to leave early. I began to feel as if I was living under constant surveillance. Madison always seemed to know where I'd been, who I'd talked to, even what I'd eaten for lunch. When I questioned how she knew these things, she'd offer plausible explanations. "You mentioned it yesterday," or "I saw the receipt in your purse when I was looking for a pen." But I hadn't mentioned my lunch choice to anyone, and why was she looking through my purse at all? The breaking point came when I returned from an overnight trip to Minneapolis to finalize some paperwork for my old apartment. Madison had insisted on driving me to the airport, knowing exactly when my flight would land, though I hadn't shared my itinerary. When I got home earlier than expected because my last meeting was cancelled, I found her sitting on my bed looking through a shoebox of mementos I kept in the back of my closet. "What are you doing in my room?" I demanded from the doorway. Madison startled but quickly recovered. "Oh, you're back early. I was just returning these earrings I borrowed." She held up a pair I rarely wore, but didn't remember lending to her. "Those were in my jewelry box," I said. "And why are you looking through my personal things?" "I wasn't," she said smoothly. "The box fell when I was putting the earrings back. I was just picking everything up." It was a plausible explanation, but the look in her eyes, a flash of something calculating before her expression returned to friendly concern, made my skin crawl. That night I had trouble sleeping, feeling as if I was being watched even with my bedroom door locked. The next morning I noticed something else. My laptop had been moved slightly from where I'd left it. When I checked my browsing history, I found searches I hadn't made, and my email had been accessed while I was away. That's when I began to seriously question what was happening. Was I overreacting, or was Madison's behavior truly crossing the line from quirky roommate to something more sinister? I decided to pay closer attention, documenting each boundary violation and odd occurrence. Within a week, my suspicions were confirmed. Madison was regularly entering my room when I wasn't home, using my personal items without permission and seemingly monitoring my communications. But even with this awareness, I wasn't prepared for what I would discover next. A violation so extreme that it would shatter any remaining illusions I had about the woman I was living with. The discovery happened on a Tuesday evening in late October. I had planned a dinner date with Drew at a new Italian restaurant downtown, but he texted last minute that he had to cancel due to a work emergency. Disappointed but understanding, I decided to head home early rather than stay at the office. When I turned my key in the lock around 6:30 p.m, I heard a sudden flurry of movement inside the apartment. By the time I opened the door, Madison was sitting casually on the couch, laptop open, looking surprised to see me. "You're home early," she said, her voice slightly higher than usual. "I thought you had a date with Drew." "He had to cancel," I replied, noticing how quickly she closed several tabs on her laptop. "Work emergency." "That's too bad," she said, though I caught a flash of what looked like relief cross her face. "I was just about to order some dinner. Want to join?" I declined, saying I needed to catch up on some emails, and retreated to my room. As I changed into comfortable clothes, I noticed several things out of place. My dresser drawers weren't fully closed, though I always shut them completely. A bottle of perfume on my vanity was positioned differently. My bed seemed slightly rumpled, though I'd made it neatly that morning. These small inconsistencies, combined with Madison's startled reaction to my early arrival, heightened my unease. I began looking around my room more carefully, checking for anything unusual. At first, I didn't notice anything obvious. Then, as I was plugging in my phone charger, I spotted what looked like a normal wall adapter in the outlet near my bed. I wouldn't have given it a second glance, except for one detail. I didn't remember ever using that outlet for anything but my bedside lamp, which was currently plugged into the adjacent socket. I leaned closer to examine the adapter. It looked standard, white plastic with USB ports, but something about it didn't feel right. On a hunch, I googled hidden camera phone charger, and my blood ran cold as identical-looking devices appeared in the search results. With shaking hands, I carefully removed the adapter from the wall. Turning it over revealed a tiny pinhole lens on the front positioned with a perfect view of my entire bed. This wasn't just any camera. It was deliberately placed to capture the most intimate area of my personal space. My mind raced as horrifying possibilities flooded in. How long had it been there? What had it recorded? Who had seen the footage? Fighting rising panic, I forced myself to think methodically. If there was one camera, there might be others. I began a systematic search of my bedroom, checking every outlet, alarm clock, air vent, and decorative item. In the air vent above my desk, I found a second tiny camera. It was so well concealed that I would never have spotted it if I hadn't been specifically looking. This one was aimed at the area where I typically changed clothes. My heart pounding, I extended my search to the bathroom I primarily used. Behind the decorative grate of the air vent, a third camera was positioned with a view of the shower and toilet. I felt physically ill, imagining the violation of my most private moments. I quietly moved to the living room, careful not to alert Madison, who was now cooking in the kitchen, humming as if nothing was wrong. A quick inspection revealed a fourth camera, disguised as a smoke detector, positioned to capture the entire common area. I retreated to my room, locking the door behind me. The feeling of violation was overwhelming, making it hard to breathe. I needed evidence before confronting Madison, but I also needed to know the extent of her surveillance. My chance came the next day when Madison left for what she said was a client photo shoot. As soon as she was gone, I searched the apartment more thoroughly. In her room, I found an elaborate setup, multiple hard drives, a computer with sophisticated editing software, and a live feed showing views from all the cameras I'd discovered, plus several others I hadn't yet found. With trembling hands, I clicked through folders on her desktop. They were organized by date, going back to my very first day in the apartment. Each contained hours of footage meticulously labeled Scarlett sleeping, Scarlett changing, Scarlett shower, Scarlett withdrew. But the most sickening discovery was yet to come. A separate folder labeled Premium Content contained edited compilations of me in various states of undressed sleeping and in intimate moments with Drew. These files had upload dates to websites I didn't recognize, but whose names suggested pornographic content. As I stared at the screen in horror, trying to process that Madison had not only been filming me without consent, but also sharing or possibly selling the footage online, I heard the front door open. Looking up, I saw Madison standing in the doorway of her bedroom, her expression changing from shock to anger as she registered what I was doing. "What are you doing in my room?" she demanded, her voice ice cold. Nothing like the warm, friendly tone I'd become accustomed to. "What am I doing?" I stood up, my shock giving way to fury. "What are you doing? You've been recording me in my bedroom, in the bathroom, you've been sharing videos of me online." Madison's face underwent a remarkable transformation. The friendly mask disappeared, completely replaced by something hard and calculating. "You shouldn't have snooped, Scarlett. This could have all continued smoothly if you'd just minded your own business. Minded my own business, I was nearly shouting now. You put cameras in my bedroom, you filmed me without my knowledge or consent. That is my business. She took a step toward me and I instinctively backed away, suddenly aware of how isolated we were in the apartment. It's not what you think, she said, her tone shifting to something placating. It's just a security system. I've had break-ins before, and I need to protect my photography equipment. In my shower, I challenged. Aimed at my bed, don't lie to me, Madison. I saw the files. I saw what you've been doing with the recordings. A flicker of concern crossed her face, but she quickly recovered. You're being paranoid. Those are just backups of client photos. You misunderstood what you saw. Stop gaslighting me, I said, my voice shaking with rage. I know what I saw. I'm going to the police. At the mention of police, Madison's demeanor changed again. No one will believe you, she said coldly. It's your word against mine. I'm an established professional in this community. You're a newcomer with a history of emotional problems. I stared at her. What are you talking about? I don't have emotional problems. She smiled, a chilling expression that never reached her eyes. But I have records showing otherwise. Your therapist appointments after your breakup with Kyle, your antidepressant prescription, the night you had too much to drink and cried about how you sometimes feel like you're losing it. It's all documented, Scarlett. A cold wave of fear washed over me as I realized the extent of her invasion. She had been monitoring my private communications, my medical information, my personal conversations. Besides, Madison continued, we both signed the lease. If you break it, you'll still owe rent for the remaining months. Can you afford that? And a new security deposit elsewhere. In this rental market, she was threatening me financially, knowing that I had spent most of my savings on the move to Chicago. But the alternative, continuing to live under surveillance, having my most private moments exposed without my knowledge, was unthinkable. I'd rather be homeless than spend another night with cameras pointed at my bed, I said firmly, though my heart was racing. Madison's expression hardened. You're overreacting. I thought we were friends, Scarlett. I've done so much for you. Helped you settle into a new city, introduced you to people, made this apartment a home for you, and this is how you repay me. By invading my privacy and making wild accusations. The audacity of her statement, claiming I had invaded her privacy while she had been recording my most intimate moments, left me momentarily speechless. You know, she continued, her voice taking on a threatening edge, I know things about you that you wouldn't want others to know. Your boss, for instance, might be interested to learn about those less than professional comments you made about her in text to your friend back in Minneapolis. Or perhaps Drew would like to know that you're still in contact with Kyle. I felt the blood drain from my face. I had texted a former coworker some frustrated comments about my new boss during a particularly stressful week. And yes, Kyle had reached out a few times, which I'd mentioned to no one. How do you know about those things? I whispered, though I already knew the answer. Madison smiled, a predatory expression that made my skin crawl. I know everything about you, Scarlett. We're closer than you think. In that moment, I realized I was dealing with someone far more dangerous than a nosy roommate. Madison was obsessive, manipulative, and apparently had been stalking me in ways I was only beginning to understand. I'm leaving, I said, trying to keep my voice steady as I edged toward the door. I'm taking my things and I'm going to the police. Don't be dramatic. Madison snapped, her friendly facade completely gone now. Where will you go? Who will believe you? Think about this rationally, Scarlett. But I was already moving past her, my mind made up. As I reached the hallway, her voice followed me, now openly threatening. If you leave, if you go to the police, I'll make sure everyone sees those videos. Your family, your colleagues, your new boyfriend. Everyone will know what you look like, what you sound like, what you do in your most private moments. Is that what you want? I turned back, a new kind of horror washing over me as the full implications of her threat sank in. She was threatening to distribute intimate recordings of me if I didn't comply with her wishes. That's illegal, I said, though my voice shook. That's revenge porn. Madison shrugged, her expression chillingly calm. Prove it was me. Digital footprints can be masked, Scarlett. And while you're trying to prove it, the damage will already be done. Your reputation, your career, your relationships, all ruined. As the gravity of my situation became clear, I realized I needed to be strategic. Madison was unstable and had leverage over me that could cause lasting harm. My immediate priority had to be securing my safety and gathering evidence properly. I need some time to think. I said, forcing my voice to sound calmer than I felt. This is a lot to process. Madison's posture relaxed slightly, clearly interpreting my response as a sign she was regaining control. That's sensible. Take some time. You'll see this is all a misunderstanding. I nodded vaguely and retreated to my room, locking the door behind me. As soon as I was alone, I allowed the tears I'd been holding back to fall silently, my body shaking with fear, anger, and the profound sense of violation that comes from discovering someone has been watching your most private moments without your knowledge. But beneath the fear and shock, a determination was forming. I would not be victimized any further. I would find a way out of this nightmare, no matter what it took. Locked in my bedroom, I tried to think clearly through the panic. Madison was clearly unstable, and I needed to get out safely while protecting myself from her threats of exposure. I couldn't stay in the apartment another night knowing cameras were recording my every move, but I also couldn't leave without a plan. First, I needed a safe place to go. I scrolled through my contacts, considering my options. I had made a few friends at work, but no one I felt comfortable explaining the situation to. Drew and I were still in the early stages of dating, too new to involve him in something this disturbing. Finally, I settled on Jillian, a colleague who had been particularly welcoming since my move to Chicago. We weren't close friends yet, but she had mentioned having a spare room when she gave me a ride home once. "Hey, weird question," I texted her. "Is there any chance I could crash at your place for a few days, having some serious issues with my roommate, and need to get out ASAP?" To my relief, she responded almost immediately. "Of course, everything okay. You can come tonight if you need to." With temporary housing secured, I needed to gather evidence before Madison could delete it. I took photos of the cameras I discovered using my phone, making sure to document their locations clearly. Then I used my phone to record video of her computer screen, showing the folders of recordings and the websites where she had been sharing the content. I also forwarded myself several of the emails I had found showing Madison communicating with users on those sites, discussing payment for exclusive content, featuring me. The evidence made me sick to my stomach, but I forced myself to be thorough, knowing I would need it for both legal purposes and to counter any narrative Madison might create. Next, I needed to understand my legal rights. A quick online search confirmed what I suspected. Recording someone in private spaces without consent is illegal in Illinois. So is distributing intimate images without permission. The lease situation was more complicated. Breaking it would have financial consequences, but surely there were exceptions for illegal activity by another tenant. I contacted the property management company listed on our lease, explaining that I needed to speak with them urgently about a serious situation involving my roommate. They couldn't see me until the following day, but at least it was a start. The police were my next consideration. Madison's warning that no one would believe me played on my fears, but I knew I needed to file a report. I called the non-emergency line and explained the situation as calmly as I could. The officer who took my call seemed skeptical, asking if I was sure the cameras weren't just part of a security system, and suggesting that perhaps I had misinterpreted their purpose. His dismissive tone was disheartening, but I insisted on filing a report. "I have evidence," I said firmly. "Multiple hidden cameras pointed at my bed, shower, and changing area. I have screenshots of folders containing recordings of me in intimate situations. This is a clear violation of privacy laws." Finally, he agreed to send officers to take a report, though he warned it might not be until the following day due to more urgent calls. I thanked him and hung up, frustrated but determined. While waiting, I began quietly packing a bag with essentials, enough clothes for several days' important documents, toiletries, and irreplaceable personal items. I moved silently, aware that Madison might be monitoring me through the cameras I hadn't yet found. The thought made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to appear calm, as if I was just organizing my closet. Throughout this process, I could hear Madison moving around the apartment, sometimes pausing outside my door as if listening. Once she knocked lightly. "Scarlett, are you okay? Do you want to talk about this?" "I'm fine," I called back, keeping my voice neutral. "Just need some time to process." "I understand," she said, her voice back to the friendly, concerned tone I had once found so comforting. "When you're ready to talk, I'll explain everything. There's a perfectly reasonable explanation for all of this." I didn't respond, focusing instead on my preparations. As evening approached, I texted Jillian that I would be coming over around 10 p.m. when I was certain Madison would be settled in for the night. She confirmed this was fine and sent her address, asking if I needed help with anything. Just a safe place to stay, I replied, not ready to explain the full situation via text. At 9:45 p.m, I heard Madison's bedroom door close. I waited 15 more minutes listening for any movement before quietly opening my door. The apartment was dark, except for a sliver of light under her door. I could hear faint music coming from her room. She often listened to classical music before bed. Moving as silently as possible, I carried my packed bag to the front door. Just as I was about to turn the knob, a floorboard creaked behind me. I spun around to find Madison standing in the hallway, illuminated by the dim light from a street lamp outside. "Going somewhere?" she asked, her voice dangerously calm. "I'm staying with a friend tonight," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need some space." She took a step toward me. "I don't think that's a good idea, Scarlett. We should resolve this between us. There's no need to involve outsiders." "I've already made arrangements," I replied, my hand tightening around my bag. "Who is it?" she demanded. "Drew, someone from work. You've hardly known these people a few months. They don't care about you like I do." The possessiveness in her voice sent a chill down my spine. "Madison, this isn't normal. Friends don't put cameras in each other's bedrooms. They don't record private moments. They don't threaten each other." "I was protecting you," she exclaimed, her voice rising. "You don't understand how dangerous the world is, how men like Drew just want to use you. I was watching out for you, making sure you were safe." Her distorted rationalization made it clear how delusional she had become. There was no reasoning with her. I reached for the door handle, but she moved quickly, placing herself between me and the exit. "You can't leave," she said, her voice now pleading. "We need to work this out. I'll take down the cameras. We can start fresh. Please, Scarlett." "Let me go, Madison," I said firmly, though my heart was racing. "This is not negotiable." For a moment, I thought she might physically prevent me from leaving. Her eyes darted around as if calculating her options. Then abruptly, her demeanor changed again. "Fine," she said coldly. "Go. But remember what I said. If you tell anyone about the cameras, if you go to the police, those videos will be everywhere. Your family, your co-workers, everyone will see them. Think about that while you're staying with your friend." She stepped aside, but as I opened the door, she added, "And don't think about coming back for the rest of your things without talking to me first. This is still my apartment." I didn't respond to her threats, focusing only on getting out safely. Once outside, I texted Gillian that I was on my way and ordered a rideshare, not wanting to wait for public transportation at that hour. As the car pulled away from the brownstone, I saw Madison watching from the window, her figure a dark silhouette behind the curtains. The 20-minute ride to Gillian's apartment gave me time to collect myself, though my hands wouldn't stop shaking. When I arrived, Gillian took one look at my face and ushered me inside without pressing for details. "You're safe here," she assured me, showing me to her spare room. "Whatever's going on, we'll figure it out tomorrow." That night, despite my exhaustion, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined cameras watching me, recording my most vulnerable moments. The violation felt physical, as if Madison had been literally present during every private moment in that apartment. Worse was the knowledge that strangers had potentially viewed these recordings, turning my privacy into entertainment or sexual gratification without my knowledge or consent. By morning, my fear had hardened into resolve. I would not let Madison's threats silence me. I would fight back using every legal means available, not just for myself, but for any other potential victims who might fall into her trap in the future. The first step was telling Gillian the truth. Over coffee the next morning, I explained the situation, showing her some of the evidence I had gathered. Her shock quickly turned to indignation on my behalf. "This is absolutely criminal," she said firmly. "And don't worry about her threats. Revenge porn is illegal in Illinois. There are resources to help you." With Gillian's support, I spent the day taking action. First, we met with the property management company, where I showed them evidence of the cameras. To my relief, they took the situation seriously, agreeing that it constituted grounds for breaking the lease without penalty. They even offered to change the locks immediately and have security present when I returned to collect my belongings. Next, we went to the police station in person, insisting on speaking with a female officer. Detective Rivera listened to my story without the skepticism I'd encountered on the phone, taking detailed notes and examining the evidence I'd gathered. "You did the right thing by coming forward," she assured me. "This is a clear case of illegal surveillance and possibly distribution of intimate images without consent. We'll need to obtain a warrant to seize her computer equipment and conduct a full investigation." She explained that the process might take time and that they would need to interview Madison. In the meantime, she advised, continue staying somewhere safe, preferably somewhere Madison doesn't know about. And document any contact she attempts to make with you. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with multiple texts from Madison, alternating between apologies, justifications, and veiled threats. I showed these to Detective Rivera, who added them to my file. "One more thing," she said before we left. "Has Madison had other roommates before you?" The question hadn't occurred to me. Yes, she mentioned a previous roommate who moved out to live with her boyfriend. Why? "It might be worth trying to locate this person," Detective Rivera suggested. "If Madison has a pattern of this behavior, it would strengthen the case." That afternoon, with Gillian's help, I began searching social media for any connections to Madison's previous roommates. Through some mutual connections, we identified a woman named Alicia, who had lived with Madison about a year before I moved in. Gathering my courage, I sent her a message explaining who I was and asking if we could speak about her experience living with Madison. To my surprise, she responded almost immediately, suggesting we meet at a coffee shop the following day. When I arrived at the cafe, Alicia was already waiting, a petite woman with dark curly hair and wary eyes. After introducing ourselves, I carefully explained my situation, watching as her expression shifted from caution to recognition to horror. "Oh my God," she whispered. "She did the same thing to me." Alicia's story mirrored mine in disturbing ways. Madison had initially been the perfect roommate, friendly, helpful, seemingly respectful. Then came the boundary violations, the possessiveness, and eventually Alicia's discovery of hidden cameras in her bedroom and bathroom. I confronted her and she went ballistic. Alicia said, her hands shaking as she recounted the experience. She threatened to share the recordings if I told anyone. Said she'd tell my employer I had a drug problem. I was so scared and ashamed that I just moved out in the middle of the night and never went back for most of my things. "Did you report it to anyone?" I asked. Alicia shook her head. "I was too afraid. I just wanted to get away from her to pretend it never happened. I didn't even tell my boyfriend the real reason I moved in with him so suddenly." Her regret was palpable. "I should have reported her. Maybe if I had, you wouldn't have gone through this." "It's not your fault," I assured her. "Madison is the only one responsible for her actions. But would you be willing to talk to the police now? It would help build a stronger case." Alicia hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, it's time I stopped hiding from this." Over the next few days, more pieces fell into place. With Detective Rivera's help, we identified 2 more former roommates who had similar experiences with Madison. None had filed police reports, all having been silenced by Madison's threats and their own shame and fear. A warrant was issued to search the apartment and seize Madison's electronic devices. When officers arrived, they found her in the process of deleting files from her computer, but much of the evidence remained intact. The search also revealed additional cameras I hadn't discovered and storage devices containing years of recordings of various women, not just roommates, but dates she had brought home, and even women in public restrooms where she had secretly placed devices. Madison was arrested and charged with multiple counts of unauthorized video recording possession and distribution of non-consensual intimate images, stalking, and cyber-stalking. The case made local news, though the victims' identities were protected. In the aftermath, I learned more about Madison's background. She wasn't even a professional photographer as she had claimed, but worked sporadically as an event photographer while making most of her income from a combination of family money and selling voyeuristic content online. The mutual friend she claimed to share with me didn't actually know her. Madison had created fake social media connections to manufacture credibility. The healing process was slow and challenging. With the help of a therapist specializing in trauma and privacy violations, I began working through the profound sense of violation and betrayal. I moved into a small studio apartment, stretching my budget to its limit, but valuing the security of living alone. For weeks, I compulsively checked for hidden cameras every time I entered a new space. I changed all my passwords, got a new phone number, and became hyper-vigilant about my digital footprint. The legal process dragged on, but Madison eventually accepted a plea deal rather than face trial. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison, required to register as a sex offender upon release, and ordered to pay restitution to her victims. Though the criminal case was resolved, the emotional impact lingered. I found myself struggling with trust, jumping at unexpected sounds, and having nightmares about being watched. Dating became complicated. How do you explain to someone new that intimate images of you might exist online, distributed without your consent? Drew was supportive when I eventually told him the full story, but our relationship didn't survive the strain. He tried to understand, but admitted he felt uncomfortable knowing others might have seen private moments between us. I couldn't blame him. The violation had ripple effects beyond just my own trauma. The silver lining, if one could be found in such a situation, was the connection formed with Madison's other victims. What began as a group of women sharing evidence for the prosecution evolved into a support network. Together, we navigated the complex emotions of our shared experience, celebrated small victories in our recovery, and advocated for stronger privacy laws and resources for victims of digital sexual abuse. 1 year after discovering the cameras, I stood in my new apartment, a bright one-bedroom in a secure building where I had personally inspected every outlet vent and fixture. The walls were painted a soft blue, I had chosen myself, and photos of family and new friends, thoroughly vetted ones, adorned the bookshelves. It wasn't the life I had imagined when I moved to Chicago for a fresh start, but it was mine, hard-won and fiercely protected. On my coffee table sat brochures for a support group I had helped establish for victims of privacy violations and digital abuse. Turning painful experience into purpose had been crucial to my healing process. Each person who found help through our resources represented a small victory against the shame and isolation that predators like Madison relied upon to silence their victims. As I prepared for our monthly meeting, I reflected on how far I had come from that terrifying night of discovery. The journey hadn't been linear. There were still difficult days, moments of anger and fear, times when the violation felt as fresh as the day I found that first camera. But there was also growth, resilience, and a deeper understanding of both my vulnerability and my strength. Madison had taken something precious from me, my sense of safety, my privacy, my trust in others. But she hadn't taken everything. In fighting back and refusing to be silenced by shame or fear, I had reclaimed something equally valuable: my voice, my agency, and ultimately my power to define my own story beyond the violation that had threatened to consume it. The journey of reclaiming my life after Madison's betrayal wasn't quick or easy. In the 2 years since discovering those cameras, I've rebuilt my sense of security piece by piece, learning important lessons about trust boundaries and healing along the way. The first major step was moving into my own place, a small but bright studio apartment in a secure building with modern locks and a doorman. Though it stretched my budget to the breaking point, living alone was non-negotiable. I needed space that was completely mine, where I could gradually relearn how to feel safe. For the first few months, I performed obsessive sweeps for hidden cameras every time I returned home. I purchased a camera detector device and would scan every inch of my apartment, checking outlets, smoke detectors, air vents, and even items as innocuous as alarm clocks or phone chargers. My therapist, Dr. Bennett, helped me recognize this as a normal response to trauma and gradually develop healthier security routines. The goal isn't to never check again, she explained during one session. The goal is to reach a point where checking is a choice, rather than a compulsion, where you can feel safe even without checking. It took almost a year before I could go a full day without scanning my surroundings for recording devices. Small victories like these marked my healing process. The first night I slept without waking in a panic, convinced someone was watching. The first time I changed clothes without covering my windows with extra layers. The first shower I took without positioning towels to block non-existent camera angles. The legal aftermath of Madison's crimes continued to unfold during this time. While she was serving her prison sentence, her victims, myself included, pursued civil cases against her. The process was exhausting and often re-traumatizing, requiring me to recount the violations in excruciating detail and face Madison in court. During one particularly difficult hearing, Madison finally looked me in the eyes, without the manipulative masks she had worn throughout our time as roommates. What I saw wasn't remorse, but a cold emptiness that sent shivers down my spine. The psychologist who evaluated her for the court had diagnosed her with antisocial personality disorder and an obsessive fixation on controlling others through surveillance. The civil case resulted in a significant financial judgment against Madison, though her actual ability to pay was limited. Her family had cut ties after her arrest, refusing to fund her legal defense or pay restitution to victims. The monetary compensation was less important to me than the official acknowledgement of the harm she had caused. More meaningful was connecting with other women Madison had victimized over the years. Together, we formed a support network that evolved into a formal advocacy group for victims of digital privacy violations. Through monthly meetings, both in person and virtual, we shared resources, celebrated progress in our healing journeys, and worked through setbacks together. Alicia Madison's roommate before me became a particularly close friend. Our shared experience created an immediate understanding that didn't need explanation. On days when the weight of what happened felt overwhelming, she was often the only person I could talk to who truly understood without my needing to explain. I still check for cameras in hotel rooms, she confessed during one of our coffee meetings about 18 months after Madison's conviction. My husband thinks I'm being paranoid, but he doesn't get it. How could he? I do the same thing, I admitted. My therapist says it might always be part of our lives to some degree, but it doesn't have to control us. Working with our support group led me to advocacy on a larger scale. I began speaking at community forums about privacy laws, digital abuse, and the importance of believing victims. Along with other survivors and legal experts, we successfully lobbied for strengthened legislation in Illinois regarding non-consensual intimate imagery and unauthorized surveillance. My professional life also underwent transformation. The marketing agency where I worked had been supportive during the immediate crisis, but I eventually realized I needed a change. The constant pressure to maintain a public-facing persona on social media for clients felt increasingly at odds with my heightened need for privacy. After much soul-searching, I enrolled in a part-time program to earn a counseling degree with the goal of eventually specializing in helping survivors of privacy violations and digital abuse. My personal experience, while painful, had given me insights that could help others navigating similar trauma. Dating remained complicated. The knowledge that intimate recordings of me might still exist somewhere online created an additional layer of vulnerability in new relationships. How and when to disclose this reality became a delicate balance. Too early might scare someone away before they knew me. Too late might feel like a betrayal of trust. After a few unsuccessful attempts at dating apps, the thought of my profile being viewed by unknown eyes now made me deeply uncomfortable. I met Michael through a friend in my apartment building. Our relationship developed slowly, built on a foundation of clear communication and respect for boundaries. When I finally told him about Madison, he listened without judgment. "I can't imagine what that was like," he said simply. "But it doesn't change how I see you. It's something that happened to you, not something that defines you."
Then.
His response was healing in its straightforwardness. We continued seeing each other, taking things one day at a time. Michael understood my need for control over my environment and never questioned my security measures or occasional moments of hypervigilance. 2 years after discovering the cameras, I received notice that Madison was being released early for good behavior. The news sent me spiraling, temporarily triggering nightmares and anxiety attacks that I thought I had moved beyond. My support network rallied around me, reminding me of how far I'd come and the protections now in place. The restraining order against her was permanent. Her status as a registered sex offender limited where she could live and work. The terms of her probation prohibited her from owning recording devices or having unsupervised internet access. Rationally, I knew she couldn't hurt me again, but trauma responses aren't always rational. Dr. Bennett helped me develop a concrete safety plan for managing my anxiety about Madison's release. "You've rebuilt your life with strong boundaries and support systems," she reminded me. "Those don't disappear just because she's out of prison." On the day of Madison's release, I chose to be surrounded by friends. We spent the day volunteering at a community centre that provided resources for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, transforming a potentially triggering date into one focused on giving back and reclaiming power. As I stand now in my apartment preparing materials for tonight's support group meeting, I realize how much has changed. The space around me reflects my healing journey. Personal photos displayed without fear, windows that let in natural light, without extra coverings, a sense of peace that once seemed impossible to reclaim. The topic for tonight's meeting is reclaiming personal space after violation, something I've become something of an expert on through painful experience. On my table are pamphlets about privacy rights resource lists for local legal aid and information about camera detection technologies. Beside them sits a journal where I've documented my healing process, a tangible reminder of how far I've come. My phone buzzes with a text from Alicia. "On my way with coffee. Proud of you for leading tonight's session." I smile, appreciating the simple normality of a friend bringing coffee. Madison took something precious from me. My sense of safety, my privacy, my unquestioning trust in others. But in rebuilding after that violation, I've created something stronger. A life defined not by what was taken, but by what I've reclaimed and built anew. The healing isn't perfect or complete. There are still moments when a strange reflection in a mirror sends my heart racing, when entering a new space, triggers an automatic scan for hidden devices when the thought of being watched creeps in unexpectedly. But these moments no longer define my days. They are echoes rather than shouts, reminders of what happened, but not predictors of what will be. If you're watching this and have experienced a violation of your privacy or boundaries, please know you're not alone. The shame and isolation these experiences create is part of how they maintain power over us. Reaching out, whether to a trusted friend, a professional counselor, or a support group like ours, is an act of courage and the first step toward reclaiming your story. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever discovered someone wasn't who they seemed to be? What warning signs did you notice in retrospect? Your insights might help someone else recognize red flags before a situation becomes dangerous. Don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful. Subscribe for more stories of resilience and healing, and share with anyone who might need to hear that recovery is possible even after the most profound violations of trust. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your privacy is your right and your healing is your power.